Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, MMR.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. Hope you'll join us more in the future and tell your friends about us so they can join in the fun too. Before we start the show, I want to introduce Father Ron Walters for the show's prayer. Father Walters.
Creator of the world, as modelers and makers, we recognize the intricacy and beauty of our world. We thank you for the vision and artistry you have given us. Continue to bless us with your creative spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father, for everything that you do for our show. Now I want to turn to the sponsor for our show, Dennis Brennan's Model Railroading, and show the video for his company.
For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products for the O-scale market. Our flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. Its prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, we've developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Additionally, we offer craftsman kits that anyone can build with complete photographically illustrated instructions that assume you've never done this before. The Sonky Wanky Coffee Company is the latest and the fourth kit to be added to our ongoing and highly popular limited edition Ellison Tribute series. These kits take Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level with Dennis' spin. The idea being that if Frank were alive today, this is how we would build these models using modern methods and materials. Use the QR code to visit our website.
I want to make a special announcement at this point. Steve Sherrill is going to do a segment at the end of our show so that we have plenty of time for Steve and anybody else that wants to comment. About the last 2 weeks, 10 days, something like that, I can't tell you the number of calls or comments that I've gotten about some of the modelers and some of the friends who have passed away recently. And we're going to talk about some of those people at the end of the show through Steve. And I hope that everybody that wants to gets a chance to participate. And that's why we're doing it toward the end of the show so that nobody can, everybody has a fair chance of making their comments and talking during that segment of the show. I do have a few segments of the show that I did not cancel. Some I did, but I have a few that I did not cancel because I think that they're important to continue. But I wanted everybody to know that that's what the schedule is going to be for the show. With that said, I want to introduce Chris Corse for just a minute to talk about the upcoming August 21st My Build on the show. Chris?
Thanks, Jim. Let me get to the slide real quick here. I had it. Let's see if it's still here. Yep. All right. Welcome, everyone. This month is going to have a challenge of harvest. And that show is August 21st. Show us your what you're working on with your what you have for farm equipment, grain elevators, hopper cars, mills, tractors, well, basically whatever you can rope into the theme of food and harvesting of that food for the season. And you can send those photos to me, railrunner130@hotmail.com. And one thing I do ask though is I'm actually going to have to turn this show over to Greg because I'm actually going to be doing some, we'll call it one-to-one scale modeling. I got to go up to the camp and do a little bit of cleanup up there and see what I can do to work on a little bit. But anyway, as a result of that, I'm going to need to have your photos by August 17th so that I can compile them and get them off to Greg so that everything will be all wrapped up nice and tight when I leave. So anyway, Greg, did you have anything to throw in?
Oh, I just hope that people who send in photos are able to make it to the show. I hate trying to interpret what scale something is from a photo. So it's much better if you send photos in, if you can make it to the show, so everyone can hear you talk about what model or layout or whatever it is that you're showing that has to do with harvesting or food or farming or cows or whatever. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being the host, and I think I really know where Chris is going. He needs more vacation time, but.
All right. Well, thanks, Greg. I actually am going to Vermont to get a hunting camp up there that needs some work, and so the kids are going to Tennessee. So I figured, why not? I'll go and take care of the camp a little bit. So anyway, I'll turn it back over to you, Jim.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris. Hope you have a good time and enjoy it and stay safe. And Greg, thank you so much for taking over for Chris while he's away.
Yep. Thanks, Greg.
Well, now I want to go to the first segment of our regular show called O-Scale Modeling. And to fill in for Dave Schultz tonight, the host is going to be Bill Davis. But before I introduce Bill, I want to run the video for the sponsor, which is the organization O-Scale Central.
I'm David Vaughn of O-Scale Central. O-Scale 2-rail, models built to 1:48 scale and running on 2-rail track, is the best-kept secret in model railroading. We're pleased to team with Jim Kello to introduce O-Scale 2-rail to New Tracks viewers. O-Scale 2-rail is for modelers. At twice the scale and 8 times the mass of HO, O-Scale's heft and ease of modeling create an outstanding model railroading experience. O-Scale 2-rail modeling is as varied as railroading itself. Modern era, transition or old time, standard gauge or narrow. A wide variety of models is available at affordable prices. There is a supportive community and lots of shows, clubs, and events. You can explore O-Scale 2-rail by going to our website, oscalecentral.com. You will find information about the scale and how to get started, as well as a free, searchable, scale-wide product and service guide and listings of coming O-Scale events. You will also find information about how to join O-Scale Central. We promote O-Scale 2-rail and support modelers in the scale. When your eyes are going bifocular, when you need fresh challenges, keep O-Scale 2-rail in mind. Check us out, oscalecentral.com. Thanks.
Well, now I want to introduce the host for this evening, Bill Davis. Bill, thanks so much for filling in tonight. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. As Jim said, my name is William Davis. I've been interested in railroads ever since my mom gave me an American Flyer train set at age 3. I did S and HO as a kid. However, I didn't seriously consider O-scale until the late 60s. Yes, I saw a lot of it as a kid growing up in Cleveland. LMB was there. Cleveland was a hot spot for the hobby. However, it wasn't until I was in the Air Force stationed at Travis Air Force Base that I would go to the East Bay Model Railroad Club in Oakland. There I saw O-scale's potential. But the real clincher for me was going to the fine scale meeting at the hobby shop on School Street, also in Oakland. There I met the pioneers of the hobby, Bob Brown, Gordon Cannon, Lee Claus, Cliff Grant. Those guys were just, showing these models that were just like fabulous, And anyway, so I left that meeting going, this is what I want to do. I want to be able to do that kind of modeling on that kind of level and that kind of scale. Today, today this is called Photo 48, and that's what I actually model that in both narrow and standard gauge. Leaving there in 72, leaving there, I knew that's what the scale I wanted to do and build. After I got married in 1972, I again got active back in the hobby. Before that, after the service, I was, how should we put this? Going to college. And actually what I was doing was partying as hard as I possibly could on the GI Bill. Anyway, so the first thing I built when I got back into the hobby was a Camino scale models DNRGW high side gondola in ON3. I was all excited about building this model. I took it out and showed it to my wife of less than a year, and she looked at it and went, "Why is there a steering wheel on the end?" And I was like, well, I got somebody who knows nothing about trains. But anyway, I got into custom building in the 70s and still do some of that today. However, it was in the 90s that Bill Schomburg came to the Terrapin Narrow Gauge Society meet and saw my Nash quad model built in Milroy kit. He asked me to review it for RMC. That was the start of my serious writing, reviewing, and articles. That is the main thing I'd like to talk about tonight. You know, we have all learned about the hobby through books and magazines. In O-Scale over the years, there have been some great magazines. Sadly, many of them gone. O-Scale Railroading, O-Scale News, O-Gauger, Mainline Model are a few that have gone. But the Gazette, RMC, O-Scale Trains, and the online magazine O-Scale Resources, to name a few, are still here. All these magazines have great O-Scale articles. However, there's one thing that upsets me. What is that, you ask? It is how guys will say that I don't read the magazines because there's nothing in it about what I like. Well, the magazine is only as good as the material it receives. Because of that, I have seen where magazines have been begging for material. So let's get back to you. If the magazine doesn't have material that you like, then send them an article. I know what you're going to say. I can't write. I'm no photographer. Well, let me share the story. When I was a kid, I was the student that never passed English. They just passed me along. And if you were to tell one of my English teachers that I write articles, even have a column in a magazine, they would laugh you to tears. Never him, but here I am. Jim Kello, our leader here, told me that he told his wife that he was going to write articles, an article 30, told his wife he's writing an article. She laughed. That was 35 years ago. He's still writing. You don't have to be a professional. Most magazines offer guidelines and will work with you and edit material so that it is publishable. Your computer works word program offers helps with spelling and grammar. If Jim and I can do it, you can do it. Also, added bonus, magazine will pay you for the article. And then one other thing too, you know, my wife, before we had the computer stuff and I was writing by hand, she was my editor and she would go through and correct all my terrible English. One more thing, model manufacturers love to see their products in print, just like their free advertising. Some will even send a kit if they know us to get in an article or review it in a magazine. If you build one you really like, write an article about it. I mean, even if you modify it, change it around, whatever you do to it, you know, send an article. Magazines will love to publish that. At one time, O-Scale was the scale that now was the scale, but now it's third to HO and N scale. However, in my eyes and yours, if you were in O-Scale, know that it is the outstanding scale. Many in smaller scales have discovered that moving up to O-Scale, the more we can get in print, the more we get in print, the people will see how awesome our scale is and want to model an O-Scale. Any questions or comments?
Well, Bill has been writing articles for a long time now. He used to write them for O-Scale Trains until they stopped their and now he's writing for O-Scale Resource. So congratulations. I'm glad you made that transfer and welcome.
Yeah, and it's like I said, you don't have to be professional. You don't have to be the photographer of the century. All that stuff would work with magazines, would work with you on this stuff. You know, I started writing quite by accident, actually. Like I said, Bill Schomburg says, write me a review. Next thing you know, he's sending me skits. And I'm reviewing stuff. You know, I got. Yeah, Yeah, go ahead.
Do you, is it strictly O standard gauge, or would you pick up an ON30 article?
Oh, I'm sure that that's a good question. I'm sure that O-Scale Resources will. I know the Gazette will,
Oh,
as far as
yeah.
that goes.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Dan will. Hell,
Yeah, damn well.
if you read my articles in O-Scale Resource, I write about N-scale, because I write about modelers,
Right.
not necessarily scale. So, yeah, anything. But particularly ON30 is part of O-Scale.
Yeah, I
Or
know.
at least as far as I'm concerned.
ON30 has also, I'm kind of a purist, so I model ON3, but then I've been doing it since the 70s, so it kind of hard me to get out of it. But ON30 has really opened up the O-Scale modeling to a lot of people. A lot of guys that were just building HO stuff, and all of a sudden, Bachman came along with all these wonderful kits and models and stuff like this, ready to run models and stuff. That guys started going, hey, I can do this. This is bigger. I can see it better because I'm getting old.
Yep.
And and it's O-Scale is fun. You can detail the living daylights out of it and stuff like this, and that's something that's hard to do in HO or N-scale or anything like that. I was at a guy's house back in the 60s, and he had a 2-wall layout, and it was O-Scale and ON3. And I was talking to him stuff like this, and he showed me a high side gondola kit he was building. And he said, well, this costs like, $35 for, this costs like $35. And I thought, gee, that's a lot of money. I could buy an HO boxcar for, what, $3 at that time or whatever it was and stuff. But it'd take 15 minutes to assemble it. He said, I'll spend a month building this model, and I'll put every detail conceivable on this model. And that plus the visit to the school street thing went, that's what I want to do. I want to build models. As a kid, I built models. I did cars and boats and airplanes, everything else like this, and trains and stuff. So, it's easy to take that, what you do, your knowledge you have, and put it into articles. I have a friend of mine who reads O-Scale resources, reads S-Scale resources, reads all these different magazines. He says, I always find some kind of technique or some kind of something in the magazine that is worth looking at and reading.
Bill, thank you so much for being here this evening. I really do appreciate you filling in, and hope you'll join us again.
Oh, I will.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sure. Bye.
Well, now I want to go to O-High Rail, which is a little different than O-Scale modeling. It's normally got 3-rail track. And the person who's going to host this segment is Dennis Brennan. But before I introduce Dennis, I want to show you the sponsor video of Milhouse Studio Models.
Milhouse River Studio builds model train working accessories that are made to last generations. Milhouse River products are built out of aluminum and have scale brass details that even the most demanding scale modeler will appreciate. Since our industry entry in 2009 with the introduction of our flagship turntable, Milhouse River has continued to add new, innovative products, like our scale transfer table, rotary coal dumper, flood coaling tower and, most recently, a working conveyor that transports coal from the dumper to the loader. All of Milhouse River Studio's stunningly realistic products are currently available in O-Scale. We are adding new scales on some products, including the upcoming release of an HO scale turntable featuring our aluminum construction and stunning brass details that is big enough to handle a big boy locomotive. When it comes to your layout, don't settle for less, get Milhouse River Studio.
And now I want to introduce Mr. Dennis Brennan.
Hi, guys. Today, we're going to talk about creating bushes in a very simple way. So with that said, we're going to do this. Are you seeing that?
Yep.
All right. what you're looking at right now is some bushes that I created in a very simple, easy way that anybody can do. And here's how it started. I was walking down the sidewalk. Every morning I take my dog for a walk, and I happened to be looking down and I saw these little weeds. Now, it's something that most people would overlook, but they just look great. And so I gave them a little more look, and I thought, well, okay, let's see how that works. So I isolated a little weed just like that. And you can see from my hand in the picture that it's fairly tiny, and it looks about the right size for O scale. Well, actually, you could probably use it in even in HO, depending on where you put it. And here is a little diorama that you guys may have seen earlier in one of my shows. I built this diorama. It showed how I was doing ballasting and whatnot. Well, I just came back home and I added the weed. Now, what did I do to the weeds? Did I do anything? Yes. This right now, I took that picture today, and it was about 2.5 weeks ago that I placed it in the diorama. Now, normally you pick something and it's going to dry out, and it's going to get all, like brown, but this has still got its color. So what I did is something really simple. I just sprayed it with, I happen to have some Krylon low odor clear acrylic matte spray. Now, Krylon, to be fair with you right now, Krylon is not producing this at this point. For some reason, they stopped producing it, but I've been in contact with them, and they're going to start production again. They were just stopped temporarily. They didn't give any reason. And the clear acrylic matte spray, low odor, that's the difference. The low odor clear acrylic matte spray has not been available. Now, I'm sure you could probably spray it with something else, but I haven't tried that. Probably any other matte spray, because the idea is to seal it. And if you seal it, then it's going to retain the color. At least so far it has. So time will tell. Anyway, this is another view. These were a little slightly different weed that I picked. And you can see it looks real. I mean, that looks as good as anything that you could buy. In fact, it's probably, I've seen some people at train shows, you might find somebody who's selling something like this, and I'm not sure what they're using to preserve it. But at any rate, it's something that you should think about yourself. Now, something I want to point out here is that I'm not just using those weeds. I've got this combined with woodland scenics, ground cover, and there's various colors in here, and there's various levels. And it's the levels and the colors, varying the color, varying the levels, that all makes a difference. Varying the textures, color, levels, that all adds realism to the layout. And I don't care what scale you're modeling in, that is true for any scale. So let's see. All right, now this is a particular weed that I picked. It's a little different than the other ones. That's what it looks like when I isolated it. And then I then added some woodland scenics ground cover. I think that was turf, green turf to it. So right here, this is the one. And so even if you got something and it turned brown on you, you could probably just add some turf. And it doesn't have to be anything particular. You could add green grass, you could add anything that you could sprinkle on it, you can add to it, but you have to first spray it. What do you spray it with? I sprayed it with the clear acrylic matte spray. You could probably use hairspray. Anything that will stick it to it will work. Now let's continue on here. All right, so now here, this is the end of the show. I just wanted to point all of this out, but we can talk a little bit more about it. And so we can end this right here, and I will stop the share. I'm not sure how I even do that. How do I get out of this, guys? You want to get me back? All right, cool. So making weeds is very simple. Now, you don't have to get that plant. The point I'm trying to get at here is you should look around you. When you're out for a walk, you want to model something, look. There's a whole world out there that gives you ideas for modeling. You don't have to dream this stuff up out of your head. Just look around. You want to create something? Look for something that will work for you. It's something that I have done forever. I'll use whatever is at hand, and it's as easy as that. You want to create anything, go to the real world and take a picture of it. You want to look at how a building is weathered, take your camera and go look at buildings. If they're brick, if they're clapboard siding, if, whatever it is. If you want to model a railroad crossing, a wooden railroad crossing, you think you know how it looks, but you don't probably. Go and look at the real thing. Find one, take a picture. If you can't find the real thing, then there are plenty of coffee table railroad books around for New York Central, any railroad you can think of. They're not cheap, but you certainly can look through those books for ideas. Study photographs. That's what I do. You don't have to have all of this up in your brain. You don't have to see it. I happen to be a photographer. I happen to have a degree in art, but that didn't make me a modeler. It certainly didn't hurt, but you don't have to be an artist to do this kind of stuff. When I went to art school, one of our teachers said, hey, don't be afraid to go out and look at the real thing. Go out and take a picture and use that to inform what you're doing. Just because you don't see it in your mind doesn't mean that you can't see it in a photograph. And once you start doing that and you start learning to look around, and that's actually what an artist does. What is an artist doing? If you're drawing something or you're painting something or you're sculpting something, you are actually learning how to see. And what does that mean? Well, it means you're really looking at something. And when you're really looking at something, I mean, you're looking at how the light falls on it. And what does that do? That gives you dimension. So you need to think about that in your modeling. So that's about all I can say about that. And one other thing I wanted to piggyback on, if I can, for a bit, on what Bill said about magazines. Now, about magazines, I'm switching gears here, but bear with me. I have been writing for magazines for years, for classic toy trains and O-gauge railroading. I've even published a book. I didn't consider myself a writer, and yet I guess I am now, because I've written dozens of articles. They've all been accepted. And what Bill said is, you don't really have to be a writer. I never thought of myself as a writer, but even if you're not skilled in writing, I could always write a good letter. I knew that. I always had a good use of a command of the English when I was writing, but writing an article and writing a letter are kind of two different things. But editors there will help you do that. As far as photography goes, it's not just a matter of taking a picture and submitting it to a magazine. You don't have to be a professional photographer, but you do have to have a sense of composition. You do have to understand what looks good and what doesn't look good. You do have to understand how lighting works. And how do you learn that? You learn it by doing, okay? Nobody's a born photographer. Nobody's a born artist. Nobody is a born writer. These are all skills that you learn. It comes easier to some people, and some people have a natural affinity for it, but that doesn't preclude somebody who's never done it before from trying to do it. You don't know what you're capable of doing until you actually try it. And was I a born photographer? No. Were my photos always excellent? No. How did I figure it out? By doing. Okay, that's what I want to say. And then one more thing about magazines. It's been said that, piggybacking on what Bill says, the magazine has nothing of interest for me. Well, I hear that a lot in the three-reel world. I want to see smaller layouts, is what people say. I don't like these big layouts, especially the layouts that are done by professionals. I don't have the money to hire a professional, and I could never afford to do something like that. I want to see a small toy train layout. I don't care how small it is. That's all I have room for. I don't have room for a 4x8. Maybe it's 4x4. I want to see it. Okay, well, that's good. I understand that, but here's something that you need to understand. First of all, a magazine photograph is not the same thing as going and looking at a layout at somebody's house. At somebody's house.
1 minute, Dennis.
Okay. Somebody's house, your brain will overlook all of the cinder block walls and all the stuff underneath the layout that's showing up. A magazine can't do that. So an article has to really, photograph really has to look nice. Doesn't have to be, excellent, but you can't have junk in the background. And so those are things to think about. And if you're going to look at a small layout, it has to be a layout that has something to show another modeler, not just a couple loops of track on a plain platform. So, and that's about all I can say. As far as a large layout that's been done by a professional, he's an artist too, the guy who did it. So you don't look at the large layout, you look at the scene. A large layout is combined of many little scenes, and you could create any one of those. So think of it as trying to make some small scenes that look good. So with that done, I am finished here, and I hope that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's funny, but if you listen to what Bill Davis talks about, from a scale standpoint, and you listen to what Dennis talks about from a high rail standpoint, what you're hearing is modeling. And that's why it's important to me to have both of these segments separate, because people in the three rail look at it maybe a little bit differently than the two railers do, but both of them are modeling. And that's what this show is all about. So Dennis, thank you so very much for your comments.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'll see you next time.
Yes, sir. Now, supposedly the next person was going to be Sherrill Johnson, but Sherrill is sick with COVID. So she's going to be out for a couple of weeks, and we've moved her segments to September. So I hope she's doing well this evening and can get back to the show very quickly. So let me now go to Tom Farrell. Tom, you may know his model won an award at Al Judy's Harrisburg show recently. And Tom is here to tell us a little bit about that award-winning model. Tom, welcome.
Thank you again for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Yeah, this evening I will be featuring the Best of Show winner at Al Judy's Harrisburg Narrow O meet that was held just about a month and a half ago. There were approximately 20 entries at the show. About 400 attendees voted for their favorite. And the rules were simple. Build your model within a 5-inch square without a height restriction. Hence why they named it the 5x5 contest. So of course I started with a piece of plywood, 5x5, plywood base, 1/2 inch thick. Should also say I dreamed this up to, I wanted something really unique, and I wanted something to fit on my rustic buff and old Gothic railroad. So the contest and the model fit perfectly with my scheme for a, as you'll see, this falling down building. I left a 1/4 inch perimeter around the base of the model and a little bit more on the front because I wanted to feature, at the time I was thinking a sidewalk, but at least the front of the building with a little room. I started with gluing 1/4 inch material around the perimeter to create a foundation of sorts. And I do a lot of buildings with that 1/4 inch material as a foundation because it makes a great backing for the MonsterWorks material that I frequently use. In this case, I use concrete block from MonsterWorks. They also have brick materials as well. And I put that around the perimeter, which sort of encroached on my 1/4 inch perimeter by 1/8 of an inch, but that's okay. In a 5x5 model, you want to use everything you can, every space you can. Next up, normally when you build a structure, you're just concerned with 4 walls and a roof. But if you're building a model like this, it's like building a house. And that's how I approached it. I have a general working knowledge of how to build a house from stick build. So that's how I built this model. So I marked the joist positions. I stained the perimeter with this driftwood material from Hunter Line. Then I painted the inside of the plywood black and out around the perimeter. I used an inexpensive acrylic paint to do that. Next up, since I was going to make a building that was falling down, normally buildings that fall down, the only thing left standing is a fireplace because it's masonry and it's typically stronger than the wood. So I made this box out of plywood because I was going to veneer the box with a brick. And the MonsterWorks brick on its own is not of sufficient strength that I could make a box out of the MonsterWorks material. So I went ahead and made this plywood box. Then you can see I put the joists in place there. Those are 2x10s, scale 2x10s. It's important, I always use a square, this micro mark square that's you build in square, things fit together better. So I glued my my shell in place, and then I painted the bottom of the fireplace black because I knew I was going to veneer this and start adding things, and black does a wonderful job of hiding any detail that you might need, like fire brick or something. So then I started veneering it with the Monster Works brick. This is a used brick material. And I put in a second floor fireplace, put in a floor for it, just a little piece of plywood right in here, and painted it black. And then I continued veneering the shell till I had the entire shell veneered. This was the key. I had to put in everything has an order when you do a falling building. The joists have to go in, then this fireplace. And then I began painting the brick. And I frequently use this Vallejo oxide rust as a base color. Makes it for a very nice brick. There is the brick painted with a little whitewash on there to represent the mortar. And now I could begin with the construction of the falling in building. So the next step was to put in the floor. And I wanted the front of the building fall. Of course, I have no plans like everything I do. It's just in my head. I started with the flooring, and I thought to myself the flooring would be quite ragged in the front of the building, and then it would get better in the back where the building hadn't quite fallen in. I use these 4 weathering mixes because I like variation in the weathering. So I weathered a bunch of 1x6s with these 4 colors: driftwood, blue-gray, medium brown, and grayish. Then I began cutting and breaking and gluing them in place. Next up, since it was a very old building, I wanted it to have lath. And I still had a supply of this northeastern scale ship decking material. So it's pre-glued. This is approximately 1/16 of an inch in width. And that made for fast work of the lath work, because that would be quite tedious to place 1/16-inch pieces in there. Just for a little history lesson, wood lath and plaster was eventually replaced by drywall, and that happened around right after World War II. Drywall was actually invented in 1916 as an alternative to the lath. Didn't really catch on for 25 years, but I wanted to make sure I was period correct because my railroad's in 1930. So just a quick internet search gave me this information. Next up, I wanted to put wallpaper on there. So I went online and I looked for 1920, 1930 wallpaper. I found a pattern. I brought it into PowerPoint. I shrunk it. And then I thought it would be great to just have it tearing off the wall. And I painted it gray where it tore off. And I used Elmer's glue and glued it to the lath. And here you can see I'm beginning to figure out how I'm going to lean. I wanted the front corner of the building to be falling in. That was the scheme. In the back there, you can see the flooring is still quite intact. And then the front, where the building's fallen in, the weather's taken its toll. So this is just like building a house, you know. The same 16-inch centers. Same doubling of the boards on the top. I put a 4x4 in the corner for strength. I'm going quick tonight because we're on a time crunch. I began weathering it. You can see I painted my blocks gray, and then I put a black wash on there. And I started with this green acrylic wash I came up with. Then we did a big jump here. I put in some stairs that were half in there. I put in additional flooring. You can see it's getting quite decrepit at this point. This model consumed an enormous amount of strip wood, and each piece had to be placed one at a time with typically super glue. Sometimes I'd use yellow glue, but it was a very time-consuming model because it isn't 4 walls and a roof. It's individual boards, joists, lath work, all kinds of stuff. There's the, we'll call it the eastern side of the building. Each one of these strips was scraped with a razor saw so that I had some grain showing. And I wanted to show it just like some of them were just falling down on the side. You know, the whole corner of the building's falling down was the concept. The second floor, I went with a lighter wallpaper because, to be honest, on the first floor, I thought that was too dark of a wallpaper. So I found a 1920s wallpaper that I brought into PowerPoint, shrunk it down, and you'll see where I put it up in a moment. So there'll be a better shot. This is really featuring the outside wall. See the randomness to this in color. You know, the novice would make everything green or everything white. I just like to make all this variation. It comes off really nice with all these different shades and colors and length of boards. And now this is the iconic second floor. This has John Allen, Al Judy, and Mr. Littlefield. This is a nice feature. These are 3 modelers that I greatly admire, and I wanted to feature them in this model. Plus, I didn't think it would hurt to have Al's picture in his own show. But and here's the beginning of the roofing. This is the same. I put studs across here. This is the beginning of the corner of the building falling in. There's another closer photograph. I mean, it really does look decrepit, you know. And this construction might not be exactly to Hoyle, but it's believable, is one way to look at it. There's up close. They all had to be individually placed. You know, this took some time. Then for the back roof, I had no piece larger than a 4x8. I took some very thin 1/16 inch plywood, and I just glued random pieces of 4x8 material. Some of it I split. And then I put shingles on, paper, just a whole variety of things to make this roof just look like it was well worn. That's a very high magnification, but it stands up to the magnification and certainly looks great at a typical viewing distance. These are just real cedar shakes. This is more of the 1x6s. This is just tar paper. There's the finished model. I thought it should have a clever name. The Whistle Stop Saloon has a little train here for the O. Stop in and wet your whistle. Some brainstorm I had one evening for that. And then I had these guys, these hobos, homeless guys in there. I have a fire going. One guy's warming himself. This guy's leaping out. I'll show you a close-up of these signs in a moment. There's the finished side of the building. This has a frequently I work with base colors, and then when I'm all done with the model, I go back and add what I call a toning. So everything is in harmony as far as colors are concerned. No green or no brown stands out. There's this general bleakness to this was the idea. And the back, I thought I'd put these advertisements back there, which helps date your model. You know, this old steam locomotive, this truck, this old marine poster, Lucky Strikes. It just helps center your model on a specific year. And there's that roof. That roof really came out neat. There's a close-up of the advertisements. These are just off the internet. Thought it would be kind of neat to put a locomotive on there. So we've got our concrete block, our lath. We've got this corner, a little bit of siding left. Stock prices collapse again. Since it's 1930, the stock market crashed. I got a condemned sign here. All persons keep away. Of course, these guys pay no attention to that. The door leaning against the side of the building, some debris here on the ground, made for very effective. There's your staircase. Another close-up. This was just an old magazine I found online and collapsed it to micro size on PowerPoint, printed it out and put it there. I featured some broken glass here, which is just plastic. These are artista figures that are bought. This guy's warming himself on the fire. There's a close-up of my three heroes. And there's the sign, the Whistle Stop Saloon, all made on PowerPoint. I just picked a period font, and well, it looks pretty realistic. There's the second floor fireplace, all the floor, the brick, just totally everything stained and water damaged, and you know, that's this. There's the absolutely the finished model. So I'd never entered a contest before, and I wanted to just do the very best building I could. And it took a little while and consumed a lot of wood, but I'm very pleased with the results.
It's a beautiful model. Beautiful model. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, Tom. We really do appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for Tom?
I have one. It's Pat here, Tom.
Yeah.
I bet you find it more difficult to build a rundown, beat up old building than a regular building.
That is by, not an exaggeration, by a 10 factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only that you have to detail the studs and everything on the inside, but then you have to make it look realistic. And lots of people do burned out buildings.
Yes.
I did not want to do the cliche, if you will, of a burned out building. I just wanted it to be a fallen in building.
Mm-hmm.
Because a burned out building gives you more license to be sloppy, because you've got black everywhere, so it hides detail. This has to hold up to, you know, close-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yes, it was very difficult to make, and I'm not ready to make one for a while.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Well, it's a gorgeous building, Tom. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Well, I had scheduled an individual to talk about traction modeling, but he had a conflict and couldn't be here with us this evening. So now I want to turn to Steve Sherrill for a discussion of some modelers that aren't with us anymore. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Jim. In the last 2 weeks, our modeling world has been, I think, devastated. In my 70 years of model railroading, I don't remember losing 4 modelers who were known around the world. It's difficult to handle the emotions that these deaths have created within us. The modelers we lost were Russell Postaway, Lori Green, Stephen Fisher, and Al Judy. 2 of these modelers I knew over 20 some years, one over 45 years. Because it is such an emotional situation when death occurs and we lose our friends, I contacted Father Ron, who is a model railroader and a good modeler, for some help and using some of his expertise and experience and help us handle the mourning that we're all going through. This is not easy for me. and and answering a lot of the online comments. I just swell up sometimes and have to just put the keyboard aside. It's never easy when you lose a friend. So I would ask Father Ron if he could help me at this time and help all of us. So Father Ron, if you would.
It's, as you've already mentioned, it's difficult to lose people, especially people you've known for a long time. And when it happens in such a rapid manner as it happened in these last couple of weeks, it's probably one of the most difficult. And it's even harder for a lot of us who are in our 70s and 80s, because those who we've been close to all our lives are the ones who are dying. And it's because we're getting old. Loss is probably one of the most significant experiences of our life. It goes along with getting married, having children. These events are major events in our lives, and they're going to continue to happen. And it's a sign of significance and the significance of friendship, that we recognize that these people we have known, we lose, and they create a vacancy in us. And it's hard to fill that vacancy. One of the things I've learned is not to try to fill it, to let the vacancy be. And maybe the easiest or the quickest thing that we can do to recognize the loss of someone is to share our memories of them. When I lived in Denver in the 80s and 90s, one of the men that I got to meet in model railroading is someone perhaps some of you may know and may remember. His name was Steve Shue. He was the executive secretary of the model railroad industry manufacturers organization for a while. He had a round robin group in Denver. About 4 years into meeting him, he discovered when he went to the doctor's office with a boil on his back that he had diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And his entire life had to change because he had to eat differently. He had to see doctors more frequently. I went to Rome for 2 years for studies, and when I came back, he was with us again for about a year, and then he had a heart attack and died. And our club basically had to take care of his personal effects. We had to distribute his model railroad equipment to those who could use it and appreciate who had done the modeling. And during the course of those years, he gave me a set of pieces to put together a boxcar, not one, but several boxcars. And of course, being a priest and being very busy with my own life, I never got around to making any of the boxcars that he gave me the supplies to make. But his loss was significant to us because there were only about 5 or 6 of us in the group. And so we had one person whose house we could no longer go to work on model railroad stuff. And it was a significant blow to us. In fact, I think of that original group, there's probably only 2 of us or 3 of us left. And we're not in Denver anymore. None of the 3 of us are. Steve was, he built HON3, and he basically was published in several modeling magazines for his innovative use of mirrors. And it was kind of a new thing for many in those days to use mirrors on their model railroad to make the railroad look bigger than it was. He's the most significant modeler that I've experienced a loss with. I have to say I don't know very well Al Judy. However, he's a significant loss to the modeling community nevertheless. I think the best thing we can do is remember what they have done. Each of us as human beings want to leave our mark in some way on the world. And certainly Al and several of the others that you've mentioned have left their mark in the world. And even though we may not remember their name, or we may remember what they have done and the influence they have had on us as modelers. And that's probably the most significant mark that can be left, is that we remember them. Maybe the world won't, but we will. And that's, I think, what most of us hope for in some way in our lives, that we leave some sort of mark behind for people to remember. Many of us fear, I think, not being remembered, not being recognized. And I think the other thing to remember too in regard to the loss is there's also new people who are modeling, new friendships to make. And although we lose some, we can pass on the information we've gained from our friends who have died to those who are coming behind us, and we become memorable to them. I think that's at the core of the loss, is the remembrance. And that's usually what we celebrate in funerals anyway, are the memories that we have of the people we love. The eulogies that we do, for instance, at funerals, are ways to remember them, to remember their humor, to remember their intelligence, to remember their wisdom. And I think these are the most important things for us. We may not see them anymore, but the fact that we have something from them in the form of what they have taught us, what they have shown us, what they have experienced and shared with us, are the most important things to remember. There'll always be a hole, and that absence can make our hearts, in a sense, excuse the cliche, it makes our hearts grow fonder of what they have given and shared with us.
Thank you, Father Ron. I think that, and I can't really say for the modelers who have just passed, but I know that when Gordon North died, who was probably the father of Owen 30 in the United States for sure, and maybe in the world, he was an early Owen 30 modeler. When I hear his name, as I'm going to assume will also happen to the people who just passed away, I smile. And I think that I knew that guy. They were my friends. So I'm sorry. Thank you, Father Brian. I appreciate what you did. Okay, now, Tom Farrell, if you want to say a few words.
You're muted, Tom.
Yes, thank you. I want to say, Father Ron, that was very moving. Thank you. I have a video that I'd like to play. It's Al Judy's modeling lifestyle. It was first live streamed November 17th, 2022, nearly 2 years ago. It has the highest number of views of all of Jim Kello's modeling lifestyle, which features modelers that basically, this is the focus of all their free time. I'm going to play 15 minutes of it, the first part of it, and it's only about 20% of the show. The entire show is about 2 hours long. The first half of it is, of the 15 minutes is, or the first 3/4 is Al and his modeling. And then, as you'll see, I was featured to talk about Al, and it's pretty succinct because every time I think about Al, I have to confess, like now I'm breaking into tears. So I get really having a tough time with this. And it's nice that it's on video because it pretty much says what I want to say. So can everybody see the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll introduce you to Al Judy. Al is one fantastic modeler. Some of you I know have met him and would agree with that. But Al is not just a modeler. Al is really an influencer in our hobby. He's done just about everything that you can think of in the hobby. He's sold brass. He's done custom model building. He operates the Harrisburg show. He's done it all. And so it's my honor tonight to introduce you to Al Judy. Al, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start by finding out a little bit about who Al Judy is. Al, can you give us a little bit of background?
Well, I've been a modeler for over 60 years. Started with a 3-rail mark set when I was about 2 years old. By the time I was 6, I realized that scale was the way to go for me, and the 3-rail was out. So my father took me to visit a lady he worked with's brother, and he had a huge layout in the second floor of a 3-car garage, pulling. He modeled Baltimore and Ohio, pulling 100-car coal trains and stuff. And as soon as I walked in the room, I knew I was a model railroader. I just fell in love with it instantly. So that was my modeling influence in the beginning. As far as the trains, I grew up in a town with 2 Class 1 railroads running right through town. So my school sat between the 2 tracks. So depending on what grade you were in, you could either watch the B&O on one side of the building or the Western Maryland on the other side. So I got to watch trains all day. My uncle's father was a station master in town. I had several other relatives that worked on the railroad. And my aunt, who kept me before and after school while my parents worked, lived right alongside the tracks. So she started me out with her camera, a little Browning 126 camera, and we would go out at about 7, 8 years old and take train pictures. So I was a rail fan very young, had a lot of train influence. And of course, the modeling was just like I said, after I saw that layout, I was in. So modeled all the way up through, went to college. I belonged to the Model Railroad Club at Penn State. And shortly after getting out of college, I opened a hobby shop that I had for 10 years. It was strictly a train shop. We only sold model railroading supplies. My specialty was short line and logging brass in multiple scales. I had that for about 10 years and then moved on, just did personal modeling for a while. Work, life gets in the way of other things. And as I get older, I decided to get into doing some of the internet things. I just wasn't happy with the way things were on the internet. They were so off topic, some of the early groups, that I thought I'd start some groups online and go from there. My modeling originally started out as HO scale and got into HON3 narrow gauge, and then eventually worked to, as I got older and the narrow gauge in HO was a little small for me, I found the ON30 and just fell in love with that. So that's where I am today.
Well, like a lot of us, you've experimented with different kind of scales. But what particular part of model railroading really interests you? What draws you to model railroading?
I like most of the aspects of it. My favorite thing is the scenery. I love doing scenery and designing layouts so that the scenery and everything looks natural, that it's workable. A lot of designs look great on paper, but in reality, it's tough to make them actually operate. But I like all aspects of it. The only thing I'm not a fan of is I'm not big on electronics. I'm an old school guy. I like the wires and the toggle switches. So
I understand. I totally understand. Well, listen, you're such a well-known modeler. Many of us, though, probably have never seen close up any of your models. So let's take a minute and look at a few of them and have you tell us about them.
all right.
I ordered a 3-month survival kit, and here's why it came in the most boring packaging ever.
What is this showing us now?
Okay, well, these two photos both show two small engine houses, sort of a signature build of mine. I did one for a magazine article years ago, and everybody liked it so well. I've built many of them over the years, but they're just a small individual stick-built boards, so you have the light shining through them and kind of open air look to them. And that's why I chose these two photographs to share, because they both show that structure.
Okay. How about this one?
This is a module that I built for the National Narragansett Convention in Hickory. It was called the Deadline. I took a bunch of old derelict locomotives I had that were beyond repair, that they just weren't worth fixing, and weathered them up and made a deadline behind a shop that's sort of a cut-up shop where they're robbing parts off of them. I have one of them. One of the locomotives has a board on the window, and painted on the board it says, "Sold, do not part out." Mm-hmm. But lots of things covered in tarps and pieces robbed off of them, and just made a very interesting scene to take to the convention.
Okay, next.
All right, this one here, this is on my personal layout. This locomotive is a kit bashed. It's a Bachmann Shay, and I added a bunker from a Climax, which is taller, gives a little bit beefier look. And it's shoving some log cars into the mill there past the mechanic shed for the lumber company tractors in the background. In the foreground is the old log pond for the mill that's no longer in use. So it's all grown over and the breastworks have collapsed, and so it makes for a real conversation piece.
Did you say your personal layout, Al, is a logging operation? Is that what the theme of it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's all ON30. It's a 70-foot long bookshelf layout. And it's several lines coming into to a large saw.
Gotcha.
This one's unique. This was one of my first times using the new fiber optic lighting. And if you notice in the picture, the lighting doesn't spread out and light up the entire scene. It's very directional. So you get that puddle of light under the lights, which is very characteristic of the old reflector type incandescent street lights and things like that. So it's made by Dwarven Enterprises, and I really like it. It's a simple install, no wiring. Just drill a hole and stick them in. They work great.
Fantastic.
Okay, the Tri-State Manufacturing is a 5-story scratch-built building, about 4 feet long. I built this for last year's Harrisburg Narragansett show as a display. It has 38 individual fiber optic lights. So the windows are boxed so that only certain windows light up when you put the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
It's multiple levels. As you can see, even the retaining wall is staggered going up to it in the back. Just gives it a lot of interest. The photo on the right is a view across a layout I built up in New York called the Crooked Lake Railroad. And this one just a very natural looking yard with a lot of activity, beautiful scenery in the background. So laid out very nice on that design.
Al, where do you get the ideas for these? I mean, this is beautiful modeling. Where do you get the idea from?
This is all, I pretty much do all this in my head.
Okay.
I'm sort of a natural born artist. So I envision, I look at the area and envision the scene and just build from there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, was that the last one, Dylan? Okay. Well, now let's take a break from the pictures. We come back to some more because I do want to show some more of your modeling. But let's bring in some of your friends to make this a little bit more in-depth information about you, Al, and have your friends join us. First, I'd like to introduce Tom Farrell. Tom, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you met Al?
Thank you again for inviting me, both Jim and Al. Well, first I met Al on his Facebook page, and the ON30 Facebook page that he runs. And then Al runs these shows in Harrisburg, and I met him in person a couple years ago at one of the shows, and met his wife. And but I've been an admirer of his ever since I joined his Facebook page, and I've seen the number of participants grow immensely on that page. And if I could talk a little about Al, when I think of Al, I kid him, but I'm serious. I think of him as the John Allen of the ON30 world. I mean, he is, I think of his Facebook page, of course, but mostly I think of it, the number one thing when I think of Al is him giving back to the hobby. The fact that he's a constant promoter with his Facebook page and with these shows is really expanding the hobby. So if I had to rank how I look at Al, that would probably be number one, is how he's always giving back to the hobby, and he's making a name for ON30, which is great. And secondly, of course, is his modeling is world class. I always think of there's top modelers in the country. We all have our favorites. He's certainly one of my favorites. He's just exquisite modeling skills. And then something that I've also complimented him on publicly is his composition when he takes photographs. He's not just taking snapshots. These are well-composed photos. He pays attention to the lighting, to the overall composition of those photos that we just saw. For example, the lighting that was shining down on the locomotive, that was no accident. I'm sure that was set up and it took some time, and it's a dimension of the hobby that the two of us both enjoy, and he's a master at it. So, he's really, I don't blow too much smoke at him, but he's really somebody to be admired. Not only for his modeling, but the promotion of the hobby, which is, we'd all like to see the hobby be sustainable and grow. And I can't think of anybody within ON30 that does any more than Al. And we share a lot of things, I think most common is the composition of photographs. Anyway, so, and I really enjoy the shows. I like meeting him in person, meeting his wife. And the last show, he invited me to his home, and I got to see his layout in person, and it was just great. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Now I gotta get that invite next year.
Well, thank you for all the kind words.
Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that. There's no way I could have did that live now. I would have teared up watching it now. So
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Dave Vaughn, would you like to have something to say? Would you like to? Dave?
Well, sure. Look, I was a friend of Al Judy's. That's no great boast because Al was a friend of dozens and hundreds of people. That was part of Al's charm. He was a larger than life guy. I met him as he was putting together from ground zero the very successful Harrisburg shows. And I will admit that there was some trepidation about Al's entry into another O-scale show in the area because we already had an established show. But Al did such a good job of creating a friendly space and a successful format that both shows came off better than they had been before. And the people who were attracted to Al's shows really were part of the community that Al built. And while I am always interested in the hardware, the locomotives and structures and so on that we built, Al understood that at the core of the attraction of this hobby is the community that it builds and the relationships that it forms. And he really was a living example of making that work. Al Judy never met a person who was a stranger twice. He always went out of his way to include people and make them have a good modeling experience. So I'm going to miss Al very much. I think that he had such incredible potential to expand what he was doing. And I am so delighted that Tom Farrell and others are going to be picking up the mantle and continuing Al's work.
Thank you very much, Dave, for the comment. That was very nice of you. Sam Pernice, would you like to say something? And I'm going to say this. Sam is a red shirt. And Sam, I want you to tell him, this group, what the red shirts are, because they're, well, you tell them, Sam, in your own words, please. You're muted, Sam.
I'm muted.
Now you're okay. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. In Harrisburg, I worked with Al on the show itself and helping set up, doing some of the legwork that was necessary so that Al could have freedom to enjoy the show and also meet with a lot of friends of his. And we got to the point when we wanted to be identified so that people didn't have to search around and look for unfamiliar faces to help them. So Al got some shirts that were red, and on the back it has the stamp staff. And on the front, it has the logo from the Harrisburg show. And there are about 10 of us, 10, 11 of us. And we would be at each show. We would help vendors set up. We would help them tear down. Whatever Al needed to free him up, we were there for him. And he was always there for us. We ate together, we worked together, and on a personal basis, Al opened his home to me, and I spent many hours there between shows and between days of shows. He was a very generous man. He built my layout, which is featured in O-Gauge magazine. And it to me is an outstanding thing. It's a tribute to him. I could go on and on. I had the unfortunate privilege of being with Al and Kathy when Al passed. And let's just leave it at that. I live about 3.5 hours away from them, and going home that next day, that was 3.5 wet miles for me. But anyway, I could go on and on. There's many people that have much more experience with Al and know him, but all I have to say is the red shirts, we are dedicated to helping preserve Al's legacy and keep it going. We are all going to be at the National Narrow Gauge in Pittsburgh next month. And we have already said we will make sure that Harrisburg show comes off, and the 2-scale, all O-scale show will come off, the 2-rail. So I just, he was a wonderful man and a wonderful friend. And I personally, as Steve and many of us, will miss him. So I could go on and on, but I'm not. Steve, thank you for the opportunity to talk with Val.
Sam, how's Kathy doing? You know,
Kathy is an amazing lady. It was very, very hard on her. This whole, as you know, and this all happened so suddenly. I mean, I got a call the day, 2 days before he was going to ICU, and the morning I was leaving here at home in the Finger Lakes of New York, I headed down there, and I got a message from her that they had stopped therapy and they were had comfort care going for him. It was very, very difficult. They were very close, and she supported his work. And I can't say enough for the lady. I've had the privilege to help her for the last several days, going through some things, and I can't praise her enough. She's a strong lady, and she misses him dearly. I know that for a fact. So, and then she talked often of all of you that are friends of Al. I mean, Tom remembers after the last show in Harrisburg, we sat at their house at their kitchen table talking and having a good time, and I'm going to miss that. And Kathy's missing it and missing him. She's a wonderful lady. And, you know, if anybody has a chance, either if you see it on Facebook, send her a message of condolence and praise. She knows what a wonderful man Al was.
Yeah.
And in our hearts, he still is.
I always looked for her at all the shows and thanked her for just being there, because I know that a wife's support is very important. You know, sometimes we take it for granted that they go along with this, but it is work for them too.
It certainly is. You know, I mean, like I said, she said to me without even a quibble, Sam, why don't you, I have an empty bedroom here. Why don't you stay here for the show, since you're working with Al so closely, and it'd be nice to, he could keep him company, and any help you can give him is appreciated. Never like, well, maybe not this and that. No, it was just automatic like her. And I know that anybody who has visited the layout knows how open and happy she is to have you there. I do request, as a friend of hers, that maybe everybody just hold off asking to stop and talk to her or see her, but certainly send your condolences, and I know she'll appreciate it.
Well, she was a really nice lady.
She certainly was, and still is.
Yeah, still is, yes. And I hope that she, can watch this on YouTube and know that there are guys that really, really thought a lot about, and her too. I mean, what people, and I try to tell people this, 0 and 30 is more like a family, I believe, than any other scale out there. Now, maybe that's because I was one of the earlier 0 and 30 modelers, but it's just, you know, we just treat each other differently.
Yes, I mean, you've been there longer than I, but I never felt out of place. My modeling skills are far inferior to everybody that I've seen. However, that doesn't count. What counts is you're there and you're supporting each other and supporting this hobby and letting the world know that this is where it should all be. People like this, whatever scale or gauge that you're working in,
Yeah.
it's a community, like you said, Steve. It's a community of people that love the same thing and
Well,
each other.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Ben Poole, because if I don't, he's going to give me the devil. You know that, right?
You're not kidding me, well.
How you doing, Ben?
Good. Can you see me? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, super. So I'm a red shirt too, like Sam. Well, there, get my camera in the right spot. And frankly, it's an honor to be part of that team. As Sam said very, very well, we're basically, the red shirts are there to help. You know, it started at the Harrisburg shows. We're, as Sam said, again, we're going to help out at the Pittsburgh National Show, because we were going to do that, right? We were lined up to do that with Al. And frankly, having worked with Al over the last several years, we all have a pretty good handle on what do you need to do to run a successful show. Pretty amazing. He conveyed that information, taught us, you know, how to act in that type of environment. So I'm very, very delighted to be able to continue that. Hopefully that legacy, and Tom Farrell, with your help, maybe we can even continue to grow. I had a couple of things, and I suspect everybody on this call feels somewhat this way. It's hard to believe he's gone. We all would reach out to him for our own reasons. For me, it was, you know, I like to put up postings, and I have a lot of Al's work, by the way. That one thing he showed in his video, it's right there. That's the deadline, right there in my home office. He built a 4x4, a 4 foot by 4 foot micro layout that I run all the time, and it's in my home office as well. I got a lot of dioramas that Al built. I've got a lot of models that he built. We had a little competition going, you know, not intentional, but it ended up just being something like that, where anytime we were at a meet or a show, we were always trolling to find who had the best stuff for sale. You know, we have an eye for good quality things, right? People that are spectacular modelers, and that's certainly one thing that Al has done for a lot longer than I have, is he knows good quality when he sees it, and he has an incredible collection of great modelers' work, you know, in his shop. And I have some, you know, I'm trying to do the same sort of thing. But what I was gonna say is, I would call him or send him a you know, an instant message at least once a week to ask him a question. Hey, do you remember who built such and such a locomotive? You know, I bought it from you, Al, but you didn't build that one. Do you remember? And he would tell me in the provenance of it, and you know, if it had a backwoods miniature, you know, kit bolted on, or whatever the case may be, so that I could call that out when I would put up a posting, and because I wanted to try to make sure that I was doing that as accurately as possible. So we had this little, you know, almost weekly touch point. And now I'm gonna have to do that on my own, right? There's no more Al. I can't do that. But I in my mind, I can't think that way yet. He's not gone yet in my mind, and I think that's what a lot of us are going through right now. He also, this is something Sam mentioned. Al is really gracious at sharing his incredible talent with us, with everybody. And like Sam, like Sam said, I'm not a super skilled modeler. I've been doing it for a long time, but I will tell you, I'm getting a lot better. And a lot of that is because of Al Judy. An example is this past show, Sam and I were there a day early, and we were, at the house, and Kathy was hanging out with us, and we were drinking adult beverages, and Al was kind of fussing around doing some things, the last minute preparation for this is for the Harrisburg show this past June. And I had sent him a bunch of junk piles, those little resin junk piles. I might even have one here, like this, right? Something like that. There you go. And he had them in a box. And so we said, hey, you know what? How would you like to show us how you would paint these things? And he's like, yeah, let's do that. And we had a little exercise. So Sam and Al and Al basically, we had maybe 10 of these things, right? So we went out and we washed them, and then we went out to dinner, and we came back and we put the base coat spray paint on them. And then he said, I'm going to show you different ways to do this. I'm going to show you the long way. You paint every single thing on here, every tire and every barrel and bucket and whatever. And we did that. And frankly, it took an hour and a half for me and Sam. I was, doing other stuff while we're doing that. And then he said, how about I show you a way to do that, in more like 5 minutes. And so, yeah, so he shows us that a totally different way. And frankly, that looked remarkably the same as the one that took Al and me 90 minutes, or Sam and me. And then he said, now I could do another one in 90 seconds. And he showed us that. And we're like, what the fuck? Holy shit, man. And I swear to God, they look almost identical. And he's like the speed modeler, right? And everybody knows Al knows he can do that. But anyway, I wanted to bring that up because it shows, first of all, how resourceful he is and how willing he is to share with everybody. I mean, that happened to be us that night, right? And we did like drinking adult beverages. That was a lot of fun. Well, I got a couple more things, and then I'm sorry if I'm boring you guys, but something Tom had mentioned was the Facebook groups, and Al took that from kind of nothing, and there's over 20,000 people on the various Facebook groups that Al put together and that he ran. And Tom's going to run the biggest one, the ON30 railroading one, and various of others of us are helping in the administrator role for the rest of them. But think about the influence that anybody would have when you have 20,000 people all over the world, that are waking up every day and looking forward to seeing the post that Al Judy puts up, right? Every single day you would wake up and you'd go look at your Facebook thing. And there was a picture that Al Judy put, one of his locomotives or a log train or some photo from one of his, pieces of the layout. And it was great. You look forward to it every single day. Steve, Sherrill, you mentioned that ON30 is different from the other scales. And I absolutely agree. I started my modeling life in N scale, and then I went to G scale when I had kids around the tree, and then I got real hung up and loved HON3. And boy, if you want to talk about rivet counters, they live in the HO narrow gauge world. I'll tell you that. And there's nothing wrong with rivet counters, right? They're good at what they do, but we're not rivet counters. I guarantee that. We have a whole lot more fun because we make shit up. We just go and have fun. And that Al was just like that. He would be like, what do you got? Cut it in half, put another wheel on it, do something else, make it different. No rivet counting going on there. And that's part of the family thing. We love the atmosphere. Everybody's so supportive, and he sponsored that. He made us all feel like part of that family, right?
Don't forget the chains.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, chains. Holy crap. I got one here. Everybody's going to have to do Al Judy memorial chain work on the locomotives. Here they put on here. Here we go. Here's one I'm working on right now. Can you see the chain on the front of that baby? Yeah. Everything needs chains. So let me close. I'm in sales, technology sales, and I have a phrase that I say to my team periodically when people are starting to get a little funkier off the rails or something like that. And I'll mention it to you, and then I'll tell you why. And I asked my team, is the room, you're going to go meet with customers, right? Is the room going to be better with you in it Or is the room going to be better if you never entered it? And I can tell you my life is better because Al Judy entered it. And the room is always better when Al Judy was with us. He just was so supportive, and he was a great person, wonderful to be around, just like everybody else. We're going to miss him. It's awful, and such a surprise, but my life is better because Al Judy was in my life, and I'm very thankful for that. So there you go.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Dylan Lambert, I'm going to ask you if you want to. Dylan, are you on there still? I don't know. Is Dylan here?
Yes, he is.
I am.
Okay, Dylan, if you would like to say something about Al or anybody. You don't have to say just about Al. I mean, it could be somebody in your life other than Al that made it, caused an influence and affected you.
Well, I mean, we're here for Al today, and I don't think anyone wants to hear me ramble on something that's not about him. I'll be honest with you, the last couple days have been weird, if I'm being honest. I mean, I kind of think back to when we lost Alan Carroll a little bit, but this one doesn't. This one feels different, and I don't know why. I mean, I'm trying to say this without bawling like a little baby, if I'm being honest. But when I got into model railroading, Alan Littlefield, Al Judy, Alan Carroll, they were some of the first people I met, and they welcomed me in with open arms. There was no judgment. There was no, you're just some kid, blah, blah, blah. There was none of that. And some of the best men I've ever met, I met because of this hobby. And we could talk about the modeling all day long because they were phenomenal modelers. All of them are. But these guys didn't exist in a vacuum. Alan Carroll had his family was part of his life, and so was it with Al. You take one from the other, and I don't think you've got the same person that we've all met and we've all known. So, I mean, who was Al? I mean, the man, you would talk to him. I never once saw the man mad. He was always, whenever I ran into him or whenever I talked to him, he was always happy. He didn't tear people down with, frankly, petty BS like I've seen out of some people the last 6 months, because I've been actually running into that for the first time in the model railroading community at all. I started running into that. Al wasn't one of those people. And if you were a bully, he would happily smack you down with a smile. He didn't tolerate it.
Yeah.
That wasn't him. And so would we have had a man who inspired people to travel halfway around the world to a little church in Harrisburg if I'm not even kidding. Think about it. Ian Fanges flew halfway across the world with all the shenanigans that went with it just because he wanted to be at something where we all were.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that if, again, the modeling is great, but I don't think Al would have been the same man if not for his wife and his kids and grandkids behind him. You take that out of the equation and you get a different man. And there's some, and I haven't met his grandkids. Maybe I saw them maybe once or twice, and I've talked to Kathy. Kathy's a wonderful woman. Very, very smart. I can see why her and Al got along. I can see why the two were married. They complemented each other. you know, you talk about Al, you know, if something was going on with Al's grandkids, I don't, he always crossed me as a guy who just like, okay, I'm going to put this down and go to my grandkids. That's what it crossed me like. And now he's gone. That hurts. I'm not going to lie and say it doesn't. But it was an honor and privilege to call him my friend.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I know when I first met Steve Fisher, who also passed away in the last 2 weeks, it was at Timonium, then the Howard Zane show, we called it. He was he was in 0-30, and this had to be in the mid 70s. Okay, his group had a sectional layout, and they operated it. It was a circle, very simple, but they had some quality models on it. And here was something different. It wasn't HO, it wasn't O, it was something else. And I was mesmerized by this, that how they could get something different without it being sold by a well-known manufacturer. Kit bashing is, you know, was a new term. I hadn't heard that term before. And so every time there was a show, and I think the Zane show was 2 or 3 times a year back then, it might only been twice. But every time I go there, I talk to the guys who were there, and Steve was one of them. And they were always laughing, and, you know, pretty soon they said, oh, here you're back again, you know, and they took me in. I was still in probably HO at the time, but my mind was starting to, you know, head in that direction. And hey, you know, you can create something besides, you know, what comes in the box. And so we maintained that friendship until he passed away a couple years ago. And Steve was he loved to scratch build. And I have a fairly large 0-30 layout. And so one day I used to call Steve in the morning, 8 o'clock, you know, when that was my time to call. And we would talk for 2 hours, maybe sometimes. And so one day I said, you know, I said, I counted my buildings. I had 78 buildings. And I was counting everything, including stumps, you know. And so next time I called him, he said, you know, I counted my buildings. I had over 150 and I had to stop. And I'm like, whoa. He had the largest 0-30 railroad in the world. And we say that, and Bob Gummacher would tell you the same thing that I've ever seen. So when I got into battery power, I took the battery power down to Steve and showed him, because Steve wasn't the best hand track layer. He didn't lay the track too well. In fact, it was awful. And we all told him so, you know. We could do that and get away with it. But when he saw battery power, you know, right then he knew that was the way he was going to go. So I think he converted about 50 or 60 locomotives. Well, I converted about 25. And his layout changed, his world changed. And there was a group that used to go to his house once a month. And from my house, it was about 150 miles, I think, wasn't it, Bob? Something like that. It was a 3-hour ride down there. And so we'd go down there and be there at 9 o'clock in the morning. So we were leaving at 6 o'clock. So the group originally, guys started passing away, and then new guys came on. Bob Gummacher, other guys. My mind's kind of going to blank right now. But so they had a work session, an operating session, and then they would have a Zoom meeting. And in the Zoom, we would all share what we did during that month. Each person would be called on and we would share, the ones who didn't attend. So, and that went on for years until he actually passed away. So I don't know, but I will say this. He has a video on YouTube, Deep Run Railroad. Now, I know you're not going to believe this, gentlemen. This has had 83,000 views.
Yes.
Think about that, 83,000. Okay? So if you want to see that Deep Run Railroad. Bob, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I was a relative newcomer to Steve's group. And I guess I got involved a couple of years before COVID hit us. And Kevin Hunter, who a lot of you know, kept telling me about this guy down on the Eastern Shore that had an ON30 layout, and I was into ON30. And finally I said, okay, I'm going to get down there and see what this is all about. And I'll tell you, from the time that I got out of the car, it was like I had known Steve forever. I mean, he came up and shook my hand and said, Bob, we're really glad to see you. And it took off from there. And to tell you the truth, everything that we said about Al and the relationships that he built over the years, the very same thing is true about Steve. The nice thing about going down to Steve's was we always felt welcomed. And if we wanted to run trains, we could run trains. If we wanted to sit and talk, we would sit and talk. And to tell you the truth, probably the last 4 or 5 times that we went down there, and for us up here in middle central Maryland, it's about a 2.5 hour drive down. We would sit and we would talk for 3 or 4 hours, and that was just wonderful. Steve always made us welcome. His wife always made us welcome, and we just had a great time. But a lot should be said about just Steve the man. And to tell you the truth, the way he handled his death, when Steve found out that he was had cancer, and it's a very rare cancer, he called us all in one day and we sat around, and he was in an easy chair and he said, look, I've got between a month and a year, and I don't know how long that's going to be. I don't know whether it's going to be 6 weeks, 6 months, or whatever. And he invited us all because at that point he had migrated his layout from ON30 to 3/8 inch. And he said, I have all these ON30 buildings. I have all this ON30 rolling stock, all the cars, all the people. He said, take what you want. And he gave away everything. And we went down 3 or 4 times to collect a lot of the stuff that he had. And Ryan Vigas and I and a couple of the other folks took those buildings and we took them to Harrisburg, and we were able to sell them. And Steve and his wife set up a fund down on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and it was mainly for folks down there that couldn't afford the medical care that they were really looking for. And so all the money that went into that fund goes to people, whether they need diapers for their kids or whether they need an Uber drive to a doctor's visit. And that's an ongoing fund. And I just think that's a wonderful way to do it. But Steve had a real impact on the way I think about model railroading. And up to that point, I was really involved with an HO group up here in the Baltimore area. But my entire focus changed once I met Steve and all the guys down there. And that's the one nice thing that came out of it, is that not only did we meet new friends there, but we continued to meet new friends through Steve's legacy. And I'll end with this, is that Steve and his wife, Charlene, set up something on Caring Bridge. And I don't know whether you all are familiar with Caring Bridge or not, but basically it's a website where Charlene would go in every couple of days and give us updates on Steve's progress. So we saw Steve from being very vibrant to his last days where he wasn't taking any nourishment at all. And then you had a chance to send him greetings and well wishes. But somebody on that website posted something, and it was called The Train Ride. And to tell you the truth, when I read it, I cried. Basically, it says life is like a train ride. And on that train ride, you stop at a lot of stations. A lot of people get on, and eventually a lot of people wind up getting off. And it was just the metaphor for life where, you meet friends at one station, and when you lose them like Steve and like Al, they're getting off there. And the only thing I can say is I was really, really, really proud and happy that Steve got on my train. He was a wonderful guy, and I don't think I've taken any death recently of any of my other railroad friends as much as it hit me with Steve. He was a good guy, really was. Glad to call him my friend.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to say anything? Chris, you want to?
Sure. I'm one of the relative newcomers. I haven't been around that long, but the first, I think it was the first or second Timonium show I did, somebody pulled me aside and said, "Look, you've got to talk to Al." And so I spent about 5 minutes with Al, and he's, basically like he does with everybody, he laid out the world, and that's that was pretty fantastic. And then he invited me to go to his June show, which is a little outside my league. It's not really exactly what I do with my business, but I decided to go anyway. And I'll tell you, I was blown away by the sense of community that Al created. And I think that kind of sets a new standard for what a train show should be. I don't know if how many people know this, but one of the things that Al did was it was a Friday and a Saturday show, and Friday night what he would do was he had the caterers cater a cookout for the vendors. And I think there were some other people. I know Jeff Jordan went. I think Steve, I think you've been to that. I'm not sure. Maybe it wasn't even specifically to vendors, but because there was a lot of people there that just that went afterwards, and it was a nice social event, and I hope that continues. And I hope that I don't know what how we can continue to honor Al, but I'd like to see it. I guess it's probably a little early for that, but I kind of think that Al had plans for his things afterwards, and we'll get those in time. But it's he just leaves an amazing legacy. I think he left a lot with all of us, and I'm sure that there are other people that did just as much. So I better leave it at that because I'm getting napped at by the dog here. So.
Hey, Steve, this is Bob. I'd like to say one more thing, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I guess it was about a week or so before Steve Fisher passed. A couple of us had a chance to go down and visit with him, and he was very weak at the time. But one of the things that we agreed to, and Steve, I think, was all for it, and his wife was too, is to go down and to rephotograph the layout, to create another video, to include some commentary by his wife and his kids. I don't know how soon that's going to happen because I think everybody is still grieving, but we're hoping to keep Steve Fisher's legacy alive through that video.
Yeah, that would be nice. I want everybody to look at his other videos that he has on on YouTube. They're nice videos. Greg Cassidy, did you want to say something, or?
I can't really add much to what other people have said, but what I've been telling people since I heard the news is that I've never met anyone who was as happy as him. He was just happy all the time, and he made everyone else around him happy. I'm sure probably he had his upset moments like we all do, but I never saw them. And he just exuded that kind of friendliness that makes the circle of people around him that he was able to create. He was a happy guy.
He was.
Yeah.
He really was.
Steve, this is Father Ron.
Yes, Ron.
There's a guy on YouTube. On YouTube. Ian F is his name. He wants to say something. I have to go. I have another Zoom meeting to attend. Could someone get on YouTube and find out what Ian wants to contribute to your conversation?
Al, you're on there, aren't you?
I told him he needs to log on the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, I know, but can you get his message and send it to us?
Let me see what I can do.
Okay, thank you.
Give him the link. He can come on.
Well, that's what he did, but he can't get in again.
Oh.
I can do it if you need me to.
Larry McDonald, you knew a couple of these people, these guys. What do you have anything to say? Can contribute tonight?
Well, it'd just be ditto to everything I've heard tonight, but thank you, Steve, for bringing Father Ron on. Those words were settling, because ever since I heard the news last weekend, it's just been on my mind every day and every night. And then Steve too, because I knew Steve. I can't say I really knew him, but I had met him, over the 30 years at Kimberton. And so I get a chance to talk, and
I think the more that we share, these people's lives with others, the easier it is for us to handle, our emotions in this. I mean, we don't always have to be very sad. I mean, hey, we got a lot of good from our friendships with these people. We learned things. We laughed a whole lot. There's no question about that. We traveled with them sometimes.
Yep. Well, that was amazing. Like you said, the things he shared, but also that it was a spark plug for modeling community. But 0-30, and I admire. I keep telling I'm in 0-3, but I do have 0-30 on my layout. But I still feel like I'm on the outside looking in the window at you fellows, the Black Sheep and the Hudson River group, and going back to the conspiracy, the 0-30 conspiracy with Bob Gibbs was one of our members back then also. But I met Al, I don't know how long ago it was. I was sort of shadowing him on the internet and seeing how he interacted with those fellows. And then he invited me down to Lacombe when he started those shows. I was at the very first show, and then we followed him to Harrisburg when he moved to Harrisburg to be closer to his family. And I had a choice, because my wife, I didn't want to be away too much, but she says, you need to get to a train show. And she's trying to encourage me to go to Pittsburgh. But I said, no, I'll choose one. And I chose Harrisburg. And I've never regretted it now. For sure, I am so happy that I did go. And I saw Al there, and I never suspected anything like this would be happening. It was a shock.
Yeah, it was to everyone. So, hey, Jeff, Jordan, would you like to add a few things here?
Yeah. Of all the speakers, I'm the least. I've knew Al for a couple
I wouldn't
of
say
years.
that. Don't.
Please. I knew Al for a couple of years. I had a dinner with him. I got to speak with him on a number of occasions. Of course, I missed this show in June, thinking, well, there'll always be another one. And I guess there will be. And I'm glad to hear that his memory is going to be perpetuated by keeping the show going and keeping the web page going, the Facebook page going. But the next Harrisburg show, obviously, it's going to be awfully strange to be there and Al not be there. He was always the first person to greet you when you came in the door. He was the person to thank you for coming and looking forward to seeing you again. And I'm going to miss that. But I am encouraged, at least, that keeping the show going will be a tribute to Al, and keeping the Facebook page going. And that's a daily thing. I mean, hardly a day goes by that I don't go in and look at what's going on that page. And when I can, I contribute something, and now I'll think of Al when I do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Hey, Rich Randall. I know that you knew both of these gentlemen, Al and Steve.
Yes. Yes, that's right. In 2008, we were getting ready to for the 2009 O-Scale convention in Towson, Maryland, and I was the layouts guy. And somebody, put me on to these layouts on the Eastern Shore. One of them was Steve's. So I go there to visit, and I walk in the door, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Here's this huge layout with a million details. It's like, how can anybody put all this detail in a layout in a lifetime? I was astounded. But the other thing that was astounding is how friendly this guy was. He agreed to, to be one of the tour layouts. And then he invites me to come to visit him every month with a bunch of guys. So I did that for a long time, and due to problems, I couldn't make it every month. And now, with my wife's condition, it was pretty much far and few between. But it is amazing how friendly Steve is. Sets a really great example. And Al Judy, I kind of feel like, all right, I'm just another slug. So I come in the door to his show, and it's like I've been one of his boys forever. So yeah, I really miss two great guys. Really great guys. That's it.
Hey, Steve?
Yes, correct.
I'm on the YouTube channel, and Ian was saying what he would love to say. If it's okay if I go ahead and read his comment?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Ian says that he would love to say that he traveled across the globe in June as invited by Al to the show to show people how to paint figures. And instead of doing a show, I met a man I really like. And on Sunday morning, we just got that's where it ends there. Maybe that was all he could put in.
Sunday morning.
Ian's in Australia. They may be having some problems.
Yeah.
Connection. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll keep an eye on it if he puts anything more in.
I want to say one quick thing. I took over Al's ON30 railroading Facebook page. There's 8,000 members roughly on there. And I read each and every comment, so it's part of my job. And what is amazing to me is how many there are literally hundreds of people that maintained text conversations with Al on a daily and weekly basis. I mean, if you look at the most recent posts, there are so many people that maintain conversations with him on a daily, weekly, monthly. I mean, it's just amazing. I don't know how the man had time to answer all these texts. And but he had established relationships, not with the bunch of us red shirts, but literally hundreds of people he had a relationship with. It's insane. It's a testament to how friendly, the happiest guy in the world. He was.
And Tom, you could call him up in the morning and he'd answer the phone.
Yeah, I mean,
that was an amazing thing. I never called his house once and he did not answer the phone.
He lived for this stuff, and that was his life. And when he was walking around that show, he was in his element. I can tell you, I used to stand back and just watch him walk around, and he just loved it. Absolutely loved the hobby, loved the show, and the camaraderie. Just a amazing guy.
You know, I always wondered, since we were basically an East Coast group, you know, east of the Mississippi, you might say, if the West Coast knew what we were doing. And, you know, somebody on the West Coast would have to answer that question. I see Larry's on here, Ociello. I see him on the bottom.
There's a lot of West Coast people represented on the Facebook page.
Did they?
Hey, Steve, I've got the rest of Ian's message.
Okay.
So Ian Fenges, he was saying, I traveled across the globe in June as invited by Al to show people how I paint figures. And instead of doing a show, I met a man I really like. And on Sunday morning, we just got along. I met so many people who I now call friend. Thanks, guys, for finding new friends, not just train people.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate enough to have him visit me for 5 or 6 hours, you know. He even wanted to run my layout, which I thought he was just gonna look at it. And he said, "Can we run the trains?" I said, "Sure." You know, and they ran the trains for like a couple of hours. And so I was thrilled that somebody wanted to run the railroad. But just one heck of a nice guy. Fit right into the group, you know.
Yep.
So is anybody else? I don't know if Sam, you want to say anything? Finish anything up? You want to? You muted a little bit, Sam. Can't hear you.
Am I muted?
Yeah, now you're okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say that there's been a lot of discussion on this night about the Harrisburg show. And as we speak, we have all that Noel will see to it that it continues. With everybody's help and patience, the red shirts are going to do their job, and they know what to do. And in memory of Al, God willing, I'm alive by then. We'll make sure that that continues. Right, Tom?
Well, it's going to happen with
It's
you.
going to happen. Thank you.
I would just
thank everyone with the kind words too, Steve.
Sam, I would like to say one thing. Whoever's making these T-shirts, I wish they'd make them the right size, because I keep getting a bigger size and they keep getting smaller.
We'll find something that'll fit.
You know, I would like to. I always pick on Doc. Doc, you have not been to any of these get-togethers that we're talking about. You're a new modeler. What do you think of all this?
Well, I honestly didn't think I was going to be asked anything because of, like you said, I'm new to it. I did notice though, over the past few weeks, names start becoming more recognizable to me. And Al Judy was one of them that I just kept hearing his name over and over. And I've only been with New Tracks for a little over a year now. But I just kept hearing his name, especially from Tom, but everybody. And, you know, one of the first people, like I think I've said this a few times, one of the first people that I really got to do any business with or work with was Al Puglisi. And he was the one who called me and told me.
Wow.
And I said, you know, I know who that is, just by word of mouth, but I've never met him. I'm not familiar with his work. And we had a short conversation, maybe about 10 minutes. I was at work and he just basically told me that he and Howard Zane and the rest of the community had lost one of the greatest people ever. Not just one of the greatest modelers ever, but one of the greatest people ever. The contributions that he did for the hobby were unmatched by many standards, but I personally, I never got to meet him, and I hate that. I don't know much to say other than what everybody else has already said about just how great of a man he was, what a great father he was, what a great husband, what a great modeler, what a great advocate for the hobby he was. I wish I could have met him, and it brought it into perspective very, very well that, I have an open invitation to go to Howard's house anytime, and I've yet to take it. And so it really put things into perspective for me. I'll tell you that. You need to get out there and do something.
Well, let me just say this to you, Doc, and you as a representative of a new modelers, and I say new in that you're new to this group. You're welcome. You've shown us that you have a higher degree of modeler than just somebody who picked up a ready-to-run train set. Okay, you will develop this, and through friendships with us, we hope that we can mentor you and make you into a much better modeler. Maybe you show us stuff too. We're not just alone here. We're all not great. We all started somewhere else. So I just think, I think you're doing great. Anything I can do to help, what my number is. I see Ian's on
The man from down under's on.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Ian.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Ian. Let me ask you about Lori Green. Did you know Lori Green?
Yeah, I did. I met Laurie in 1996. The year before, he'd been to the big narrow gauge convention in Denver, I think, and he'd won Best of Show with his ON3 destroyed coach. And it was basically stripped the wood and it was collapsing and everything. And the first thing I ever did, he was doing a talk on how he weathered and modeled and all that sort of thing. And he said, would you like to hold it? This thing has just won the Best of Show. It's an amazing model. And then he said, yeah, carry it. And I'm carrying this thing like the crown jewels. And it was really an absolute special. And I kept running into him. He used to give me tips on how to better do dioramas because I'd taken a model down there. I thought I was, I thought it was the best thing I'd ever done. I was, 36. And I ran into these guys and watched what they modeled. And Laurie was an absolute, always willing to teach you or show you how to do it. Often would do lots of lectures. Unfortunately, I'm not his. The guys in Victoria were very close. They are really missing him because he was very much one of the starters of the modelling. They people like Dan Picard and all these guys I know really well. They went to see him at shows, and he would have his models, and they became friends, and they all had a dinner. I think there was a show actually on the weekend. Last weekend, the big Victorian show, train show, and everybody found out that he'd passed away that morning. And it was a very somber weekend because 6 or 7 guys were exhibiting from the narrow gauge group. Grant McAdam, Dan Picard. So we've sort of, I got that news Saturday morning. I knew he wasn't well, so we're sort of glad he's gone, if you can understand, because he was in a lot of pain. But we're going to miss him because he was such a positive influence on all us modelers.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So, and then on Sunday morning, I got a message from one of the guys in Tasmania, Nathan. And he said, Al's passed away.
Hmm.
And the first thing I did is I messaged, excuse the cries, I'm an emotional guy. I messaged Dan Russo. I said, mate, is this real? Because I didn't know, because this is an Australian. And then Steve messaged me. And I had to take myself, I was actually in church at the time. And I take myself outside because my wife said, what's wrong? I said, honey, I've just had such terrible news. And I only met him once. But I stood outside the Harrisburg church and there was the sign. And I, as you said, the first thing you do is you walk in. Al was at the doorway. And I couldn't believe it. I traveled thousands of miles. And it's, the close guys know, 80 hours on a plane to get there for my crazy journey. Yet here I was, and I was meeting Al Judy. And I remember giving him the biggest hug and shedding a few tears. And then, nothing was a problem. He would, he'd get everybody to look after me. He set up this amazing facility for me to actually show people how I paint. I had a monitor, I had a video camera over what I was doing. Anybody could see what I was doing. It was positive. The only beef I had with Al is I got sent to my room on Saturday morning. Remember we had breakfast, Steve?
Yeah.
And then and you, Tom, and I got in and I was just doing a little bit of shopping and Al walked up quietly and tapped me. Shouldn't you be in your room? So I got sent to my room by Al Judy.
Yeah.
And then Sunday, Dan had organised that we'd go to see the layout. And of course, I didn't want to press or anything or do things that were out of, because I was meeting everybody and it was like, what Al did for me is he got me to meet so many people that I only knew through the internet. And then they become friends. Steve and I ran around and Tatum together. And then, it was very special.
Something, Ian, we were so excited to have you come. I know Al was too. And you just turned out to be.
You were like an international celebrity kind of. And I set up that light thing of yours. It took me like half the morning, by the way.
I thought you would have. I saw how good it was.
Well, you're welcome.
Oh God, man!
It was such an experience for me. Sorry. The people I met, I can't believe the experience I had on the East Coast with all of you. I wanted to stay longer. On the Saturday afternoon, Dan wanted to show me the horseshoe curve.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have stayed and just chatted. I so wanted to volunteer to be a red shirt, but I knew, it would be once every 13 years sort of thing to get there. But I was planning on, I won't come next year, but I'll save up and I'll come the year after or something like that. And now I hope that I can do that.
Well, we hope so too.
Because I just want to do it again. I want to have another run around, even if I have to put up with Big Dan at Walsham. Gosh, I love that bloke.
That's one of the tests.
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah, if you can get along with him,
Everybody gets along.
And hugging a certain Aaron. I've got a photo of Aaron and I hugging each other, and I'm standing on a chair to do so.
Wow.
So I'm appreciated. And I just wanted to come in because I heard everybody, and I heard Ben and everybody, and
Well,
And then you
I'm-
showed that video. I had to go away. I was just a mess when you showed Al's face and talking and everything.
Well,
Okay.
And I only met him
I'm glad,
once.
I'm glad you made the connection. I'm glad it worked
Yeah, I
out.
tried my best.
Oh, I know you did. Hey, you made it. You're just a little, Australian time is a little bit different.
This is the man from
It takes me 80 hours to get anywhere, remember?
They still think it's winter down there.
Oh, mate, it is. I'm in Ugg boots. It's freezing cold today. It's raining and it's cold.
How cold is it, Ian?
Yeah.
Oh, Queensland cold. It's about
21 degrees Celsius.
It's about 21 degrees Celsius,
Nobody knows.
which is about
Wow.
80. About 80.
Yeah.
80.
Yeah.
I'm sitting out in the
75?
backyard and it's about that right now. It's not winter.
Wow. Does anybody have anything else they want to add? Jim, do you have anything that you'd like to say?
It was a great privilege for me to have a little bit of knowledge with Al. Al never turned me down. Everything that I ever asked him to do, he was always there. He was always available. Yeah, like somebody said, you called Al, regardless of when it was, he'd pick up the phone. I never had anybody else when I called Al, I never had anybody but Al pick up the phone. Al was supposed to be on the show. I think the 10th of July, somewhere in that time frame. And I heard from him the day before he was supposed to be on that show, and he said, in effect, Jim, I can't do it. This is really taking me by surprise, and I don't know what it really is all about, but I'm just not feeling that well, and I can't do it. And I said, well, don't worry about it. And I kind of brushed it off. We all get sick. We all feel bad, from time to time. And I took it that way. And we kind of left it up. Well, that's fine. Let me know when you're feeling better. We'll reschedule it. And no big deal. And then I got a call that night from Tom Farrell. That he had passed away, and that was the last time that I had any connection with him. If it hadn't have been for Al, New Tracks wouldn't have been invited to the narrow gauge annual convention in Pittsburgh. Al made those arrangements for us. He got the people that are manning the booths. He got them free admittance to the show. He did everything that he could possibly do to help us try to promote New Tracks, promote our scholarship program and so forth. You couldn't have asked for a better friend. You couldn't have asked for anybody in the hobby. If you needed something, or if you didn't know somebody and you needed an introduction, Al was the first call. Al was the guy that would put you in touch. And boy, I'll tell you, the things that he did for me is just too numerous to go over, but I'll certainly never forget them.
Well, none of us will. None of us will.
That's why I thought that this might be an important thing to do tonight for the show. Because when we started, I guess 2.5, 3 years ago, when Dylan and I were doing the show together at that point, because Dylan could do the technical stuff. And when we started with the modeling lifestyle, we did it because of nights like tonight. Because here are people that were still in their prime and still had an audience and still had a presence, and you could sense who they really were as individuals, and you could meet some of their friends. That's why we had each one of them invite 3 friends to join them on their particular show, and hear what the friends say and see the interaction between the modeler and his friends. And I think that was important. I really do. I'm so happy that we were able to do that when we did it, and pick and have Al be one of the guests that we were able to copy. His video, it's got more hits than anybody else that we ever did. It's well over 1,000 people now that have viewed that video that you saw a portion of it that Tom showed you. And I think that if you get a chance, and you have the time, you ought to take a look at the whole thing, because it really does go into some detail later on about what Al has done in other areas. And you'll see some interaction between the three friends that he had with him that night. And I was really pleased about the way it turned out, and I think Al was too.
Wow. Quite something. We've had this last 2 weeks has been really tough. I mean, we lost a lot of good people. A lot, you know.
Really, you guys did a great job, Jim, for partitioning off so much of the show for this remembrance of these guys, and Steve leading the conversation. This was just, and Father Ron, that was very moving and very useful, what he had to say. Just wonderful night, and just, very nice. Yeah.
Tom,
Gentlemen, I think that may be it for this evening. Thank you so much, all of you, for coming and sharing your thoughts and sharing your remembrances and so forth. We really do appreciate it. This will be on our YouTube channel. It'll be segmented out separately. So if anybody that you know might be interested because they couldn't be here tonight, or if you'd like to see it again sometime, or do it with your friends, feel free, because it'll be there on the YouTube channel, and you can see it anytime you want. Steve, thanks so very much for all your hard work putting this together. Can't thank you enough for that. I think this was one of the best segments that we've ever done on the show, and I'm really pleased that we could pull this together and make it happen.
Thanks, Jim, for the opportunity.
So you could maybe do the caboose for the show, then we'll close it down. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the show. Most importantly, hope you learned something. Till next Wednesday, happy modeling to everybody. Thanks again.